Welcome. This is Dan Marks with articlev.org. I'm talking with Mark Fanjoy of the Living Constitution up in Canada. Welcome, Mark. Glad to have you with us here today. Um,
Thank you very much for having me.
you're welcome. First of all, let's start out with what is your background? What do you do? What's your day job?
Well, I'm basically a contractor. I do east troughing. I guess you guys down there will be call it gutters,
Yeah.
soffit fascia siding type of things. I have a little shop my own that once I hit 45, I downsized and basically do my own work and my own jobs. So I'm the guy that you pick up the phone and get to help fix your house.
Right. And now, what is the Living Constitution that you're working on?
Well, this is basically a foundation of our organization called Canada the Nation. That a few months ago, I started going down what we call the proverbial rabbit hole of knowledge, and trying to unweave the web of the last 500 years of history between the Vatican, the Crown, the Queen, the states, and every country in the world is kind of going through this mass awakening.
Yeah.
And one of the fundamental things I saw in my journey, which was your Constitution and the Magna Carta, and a number of other documents showed me, was in our own Constitution, our Bill of Rights, um, was that there was a lot of fundamental things wrong with them, and a lot of fundamental things wrong with the applications of what things are that might have been good 300 years ago,
Yeah.
but aren't good for today's modern time. And they definitely have not kept up in any manner at all. So, one of the things I thought of, how do we step forward into a new paradigm from the older generations into a new technological 21st century time? How do we move forward with the world in such a mess that it is? And I
Right.
really believed that in order for people of different cultures, mindsets, races, everything else, we needed a fundamental place to start from. And to me, the whole idea, not reinventing the wheel, I'm not that smart in the first place to reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
um, was the whole concept of a constitution. But what I really noticed was that there's not a strong, solidified way of amending it and moving it forward, or accounting for all the differences in today's societies with a global community.
Right.
So I refer to it as a living constitution where any citizen has the right to petition its leadership, and with a very small majority of that leadership saying this is worthy of hearing, it has to be put to a national referendum,
Right. And
and majority would rule.
now, I'm not that familiar with the Canadian Constitution. It sounds like there really isn't a constitution up there that you can just read through or anything like that. How does that work?
They 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 do say that we have a constitution or Constitution Bill of Rights. Um, with inside of the reading of that, if you start looking through the legalese and the way that existing governments have basically perverted the English language, you're actually dealing uh, in many times with the language of the Law Society, and the United States and every other country. You will find that they are governed by a law society, and as in any other society, they get to choose what a word means. And
Yeah.
in order to understand what's going on, you have to look at that society's definition of those words to understand what they're talking about.
Right.
So if your government turns around and calls you a person, do you know what the word person means?
Right.
Is it what me and you mean?
Right. Well.
Is it what the guy down the street means by it? Is it what maybe a native in an island says a person is? You would have to actually look to the Law Society, because they're the ones who wrote it, and say, what is your definition of a person? And
Wow.
their definition of a person is chattel. You're a
It,
cattle. You're a piece of property.
wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's a new one. Yeah,
Yep.
here in America, the United States, we say it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Although lately it hasn't seemed like that, I have to admit. Um, Now, have you been looking at the Iceland model of how they've created this change up there and worked on their constitution? Have you been looking into that at all? Or is that the direction you guys are going?
Well, it was one of the aspects of when I started to research what was going on in my life, and for me that meant I really had it. I really had going out working every day. Um, Something in me that weekend turned to me and said, "You know what? I worked 20% harder this year, and I brought home 30% less, and the government asked for another 15% more."
Yeah.
And it just took me over the top, and I went, we're not meant to live this way. So I that's what got me on the computer and started going. And for me, it started off with the free man movement. And of course, I discovered right away how the mainstream media and the government subverted that and basically turned what were law-abiding civil activists and truth seekers into, oh, that nice term, domestic terrorists. Well,
Uh,
now we got to protect you against these guys. Just give us another $100 billion more, and we'll add some more tanks to the roads to protect you.
yeah,
You know,
exactly. Actually, we had the same problem here with the National Defense Authorization Act in 2011, I believe it was. They had also classified a lot of people as domestic terrorists, and one of the terms was a threat to the Constitution. So, one of the things that I do when I'm talking about amending the Constitution is I try to make sure that people understand that we're actually obeying the Constitution and trying to do this in a constitutional fashion, not tearing it to shreds. Because
absolutely.
I don't want to be a terrorist.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only their term. It's only the government's terms in order to subvert knowledge being put out as they've always done throughout history. But I did absolutely look at that journey with some of the freemen up here would be like Dean Clifford, Robert Menard, a good handful of a dozen individuals that try to share their knowledge about how the laws actually work, how they've been subverted. That for our nation, and I believe for your own as well, our beginnings started underneath a common law, the common law of the lands, and that is a fundamental base of law right back to the 900s. And it's been subverted into being a Roman civil quasi maritime law type of thing, and we just believe we're still under or supposed to be under a common law apparatus.
Charitable ideas are frowned
Foreign.
upon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to lock up homeless now and make sure to kick them out of the city instead of.
Yeah.
We're shutting down soup lines in this country.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they're
absolutely
making
insane.
they're making it illegal. There was some 43% of local cities have outlawed it to feed the homeless,
Yeah.
to feed the needy. So if you it's all over YouTube. You see local charities or local citizens or whatever setting up a lunch table and offering food to the homeless around town. They're arrested.
Yeah.
It's
It,
illegal now.
I,
getting it down to actually whether you're religious or not, or the whole other aspect of mankind. I mean, we've got our logical mind that is talking about the Article 5 and us, the Constitution, or banking and
Hmm.
so forth. But as men and women of the planet, I still do believe we are much more than that. We're much more than our logical mind.
Yeah.
We have a connection to the earth. We have a connection to the universe, energy, everything else, and whether you want to label it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of labels, but whether you want to label it as God or the Great Spirit or Source or whatever, collective energy, there is no denying that there is that existence.
Yeah.
And for me, I call it you get called to your duty of where it lies, and whether Source provides your road to you,
Yeah.
and will help you along it. All you do is have to walk through the doors.
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and there's a few that are maybe brave enough or desperate enough to walk through doors. But
Yeah.
and if you for me, my journey over this last 6 months has really taught me that. And some of that has been that I feed that spiritual side of me, or that other left side of the brain side of me, of nurturing, that is being so taught and ingrained and socially engineered out of us.
Yeah.
And that was the first facet of public education. Was the first thing that did it.
Yeah.
It
I.
was it was, and the churches and the religion, and so forth. Everything that we've done, if we think back from our age in the 60s and 70s and everything else, and we can see the progression, that everything to do with society is being made to divide us, and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
divide households, divide men and women, divide families, to divide towns, divide cultures, divide everybody. And that's been taken away our humanity in the long run.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of this movement, and if you listen to some of the other people, they go, well, the whole Mayan calendar, the world is ending in last December 24th.
Yeah.
That wasn't what it was to a lot of the in-depth people. It was about, there's a new paradigm happening in the universe. There's a change of energy. There's a change in direction of actual spiritual energy.
Yeah.
And it was basically, as far as the Mayan calendar goes, and a lot of ancient prophecies and so forth, was that mankind was going to get up to a certain wall, and they were going to have a conscious change in their outlook.
Yeah.
And to me, I can't see that didn't happen.
Yeah. I.
You know.
Here, I would suggest taking a look at our Declaration of Independence, because they talk in there about unalienable rights, and the reason that those are natural rights, not given to us by our government, but inalienable to us as human beings, and the right to alter and abolish your government is an unalienable right. And I believe that I think what you guys are doing is absolutely the right thing to do. You need to get these things in writing, and define your purpose as a nation, and kind of form the direction you want your nation to go for the next 200 years.
Absolutely.
Now, are you afraid of powerful corporate interests getting in to manipulate a process like this? If you feel like you can get a constitutional convention together, would you be afraid of what the corporations would do in that kind of setting?
I'm not for ourselves, because unlike yours, for what I know of it so far, you've got such a um, lawful remedy available to you through your Article 5, and you have found that, and you've got the tools in place, so you'll have that ability as your you've got a lawful right to be in front of your Congress and to ask for it, and trying to do the things that that you've been doing in order to make that happen. And you'll have those battles with your corporations and your funding and your lobbyists. And, once you get up to a certain stage, you will have to battle that war machine that will just throw tens of millions of dollars behind them and blitz the media and everything else to fight you.
Sure.
Where I've taken the road is much more subdued. I'm basically at a very grassroots movement where I've started this, and I'm bringing on people that are like-minded and that I've vetted and can trust and develop an inner core, and reaching out. And my idea of this platform is I'm reaching out with our living constitution, saying to my fellow human beings that this is the way that you're living right now. I'm offering or suggesting an alternative. What would you rather have? Would you rather stay underneath this corporatized government, or do you want to seek a better life and seek an alternative? And that will build within its own, where the numbers will build far enough that it will be no longer a matter of us trying to have, in your case, in Article 5 to adjust the Constitution. This will be a matter of, guess what? You've got another society in Canada. You've got 2, 3, 10 million people standing up saying, we are now going to live under this Constitution, not yours.
That's
now,
great.
what are you going to do?
That would be. I mean, that seeing images like that really get me choked up. When I see people in Turkey banging pots and pouring out into the streets like that, and standing up for themselves. And it just doesn't matter what age group or what economic bracket they come from.
Religion, race,
Yeah,
nothing. Sex, anything.
when you see something like that happen, I mean, it really gets me right here.
And it's here's a question I wanted to kind of ask you for outside information.
Hmm.
How is the Article 5 relating to your original peoples at all? Tribal, Indian affairs or anything like that. We call it your original peoples.
Yeah. How did?
How are you doing any kind of outreaching to them?
Locally, locally, I am. We've got a very strong sovereignty movement here on the islands. That people that feel that there's no treaty of annexation for the islands.
Yeah,
I've talked to them about the need to get together because there's 17 different Hawaiian nations that
yeah,
now claim rights to the throne. That we really need to get some consensus among these groups as to what solution should be proposed in an amendment form, which they haven't been considering yet. And I've been telling a lot of these guys that this is an opportunity that's going to come and go, and if you guys aren't ready for it, you're going to miss it. And I can't come up with the amendment proposal for you guys. It's got to come from you
yeah.
guys. But on the other hand, for Native American Indian population, I've been telling other people that recently Australia had an Indigenous Peoples Rights Amendment that they had
Hmm.
passed and ratified there. Also, the United Nations had an Indigenous Peoples Rights resolution that
Yeah,
nearly every country in the world signed on except for the United States.
yeah,
So, that's one of those things that they can look at this thing and get some ideas for it, but really to recognize the sovereignty and rights of these people and their rights to preserve their culture, stuff like that, are fundamental ideas. I think that you're going to find that most people in the whitest communities
yeah,
in Mississippi are still going to say you have a right to preserve your culture,
yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Well,
I
for us, it's a huge cultural issue. because it's really risen back up. Like we
Yeah,
still have um, a significant original people's population, and not only that, but now it's becoming really vocal.
yeah.
And because every treaty that has existed has been broken, everything, the total subversion and the total genocide of everything in history is really coming to light.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
I was wondering if that was like through the I don't know more movements and everything else, if that's starting to take effect through the Americas at all.
it's one of those things that there's definitely a lot of political energy behind, a lot of people energy behind. But as far as a proposed solution in amendment form, I haven't seen it yet, and that's why I've
Mhm.
been pushing some of these groups to give us language. I've been
Yep.
suggesting language to some of these Hawaiian groups too, where the United States sets aside X number of miles to be the sovereign territory within the United States borders located in these islands, yada yada
See,
yada.
your island is almost a perfect example where what we're going to be coming across, and I know it's even going to be stronger in the future, is as you go to those tribes to say that we're going to set aside, their response to you is, "Oh no, you're misunderstanding our position.
Yeah.
You people don't exist. This is our territory, and you are demanded to leave."
Exactly. And I tell them I understand what you're saying and I don't disagree with what you're saying. But I'm telling you, there's an opportunity coming up that you can make some serious action. Right now, their prime action is through international court to get the
Yep.
international court to recognize that there was no treaty of annexation and then tell the U.S. government give it back. Well,
Yep.
the U.S. government is going to tell them to go take a leap because
Well, exactly.
it's like Bush being convicted of war crimes. They're not going to
Yeah.
turn him over. I mean, I would love it if the guy would, and I think that we as a nation are
Should
obligated
turn
to
them over.
comply. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but we refuse
See,
to do it.
this is one of the facts that is really becoming like as far as our medias or our alternative medias is forefront. These are things and stories that we get going. Well, we used to see it as there was the U.S. government and there's the U.S. people.
Yeah,
Well, we're not seeing that anymore because guess what? The international courts have condemned Bush.
yeah,
There is a number, Cheney and a whole bunch of other ones have been actually convicted at The Hague,
yeah.
and the U.S. people are protecting them. The U.S. is not turning them over, and the U.S. people are doing nothing about it. And so they're kind of now basically going, well, you know what? The only real terrorists in this world are the United States.
You know,
You know?
but really connecting the dots there and showing people that this isn't just us. And I know that we're as advanced as we are. We're a very modern country, but at the same time, our people are just completely pacified by cheeseburgers and
Yep.
Corinthian leather. And until they actually feel the pain that the rest of the world feels,
Yep.
they're asleep. And they
This
just
is where a lot of ours is as well. Through some of the discussions I've had in the last month or so, desperation always sets the needs. And when you're basically comfortable, you don't see so much need.
right.
And now your nation, to by what our accounts are, your nation is going through a lot of what's mirroring us is the absolute collapse of the middle class,
Yeah.
and you can tell that in your housing markets and all the rest of it. Well, they got no source of that mass income anymore. Your taxation levels are going to be lower, so you're going to have more and higher taxes.
Right.
You're going to have a bigger divide of your classes and distribution of wealth if you look at it really in an overall. So your society is segments of it are going to get more and more desperate now every year
Yeah.
because it can't sustain itself, and now people are going to turn to going, oh, how did we get here? And yeah, it's the cheeseburgers, it's the GMOs that actually chemically alter your body.
Right.
It's the fluorides in water that actually chemically change your brain. And people are starting to wake up to this, and this information now with our computers and everything else is getting available. And the good old terms of conspiracy theory doesn't work anymore.
Right, right. Yeah,
You know?
I keep saying that people are as ignorant as they choose to be. When you have Google out there, uh, you're choosing to stick your head in the sand. All the information is there. You can check it out. When people say something outrageous, it's pretty easy to verify or dismiss.
Oh, sure. And like your point was, and we had I went to BC on a meeting with 40 of us that were kind of like-minded and so forth. Where my direction for Canada Nation stuff right now is really to start to reach out and connect to people and so forth. And I'm really discovering, we're by most certainly not alone out there. And
Yeah,
it's whether it's the States or Canada or Iceland, or even if you get into Facebook or Twitter or anything else, start looking into South America, start looking
yeah,
into the European unions. Um, More and more countries kicking Monsanto out, realizing the change in the chemically altering of your foods is chemically and altering your bodies and your minds and how you operate.
right.
It's so fundamentally right in front of you when you look, and it was really quite pleasing to me to connect with you,
Yeah,
and realize, well, look at, this is somebody else, and here's another group, and the states are not only um, fighting individually, but now when I got introduced to yourself, seeing that you guys also have a lawful means of trying to seek a remedy
we're
in
lucky.
your course of actions, right?
Yeah,
I know, like, some of this Texas and Colorado, and some of them are basically trying to basically just go back to being their union state
right.
and withdraw
Yeah,
from
secede.
the United States,
Right,
right?
right.
So I don't think there's going to be a clear, and I look at it for our own country as well, because we've have that parliamentary British system, and for us, we may be a lower population, but we're so much of a melting pot,
Yeah,
that we have so many different cultures here. We have so many different avenues. Our provinces and our territories have a very young but strong history and
yeah,
very distinctive history between them. As in, just like Texas and, say, New England.
yeah.
Our provinces can be just as different by their territories
Sure.
and history, right?
Yeah,
So we have, what the new paradigm of any kind of government is going to be up in the air, and I think it's not going to start until we really awaken to the fact, agree to be human beings again,
yeah.
and be fellow men and brothers and sisters to everybody, and accept our differences and set our political agendas for the betterment of everybody. Cool about that, you know?
Yeah, and I think that honestly, the vision that you have, that I have, and others have, it's going to become viral. It's just that awareness, and really, I think this Syria action. I mean, we got duped on the Iraq war,
Oh, yeah.
and we know it. We
Jeez.
know it, and
Yeah.
the same script comes rolling out for this thing, and it turns out to. I mean, it just blows up in their face, and
Yeah.
they're pretending like nobody noticed, and it's a little bit. What do they think?
Bizarre.
If, people are not that stupid.
Yeah.
You can fool them only so many times before. This is going to be an extremely significant mess up on
We
our
all
part.
sat back here and we're looking at, well, wait a minute, didn't you guys go through Vietnam? Didn't you guys go through this and this? And you saw, like, I mean, you got a history of how your soldiers and everything else were treated.
Yeah,
Why are you guys complaining when you're coming back from Iraq? Like, why do you think it's
I
going
I,
to be any different?
I told
And the real truth of it is that people forgot. Every one of us sitting, or every voice, every set of ears listening right now, think we're all alone.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
There is tens and tens of thousands of people all over that think the same way as you do, have the same heartfelt questions that you're having right now, or why you're listening to two guys on a YouTube. You
Right.
know, and it's the one thing I've really discovered on my road in the last little while. And even just look at the example of me and you. We just simply connected, and here we are talking, and we
Right.
find out just we're from different countries. We don't have anything in common at all. But look how much we do have in common.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and you know, we can be on fully different paths, but we all want the same end goal. We want to be free. We want to live decently. We want to be treated the way we treat other people, with some respect and dignity. And we got to get back to this understanding of basic humanity. That, you know what, killing somebody else is wrong. Going to another country and slaughtering them for their oil or for their money or for political gain is wrong.
Right.
It's genocide, like plain and simple.
Right.
And it won't stop until we as individuals simply sit down. Like our action plan, when we get to numbers, it isn't to protest, it isn't to go to the street, it isn't to do anything. It's to simply close your door and sit at home, spend the day with your family.
Yeah.
Can you I'll give you the same a little example maybe that would clarify it for you.
Uh-huh.
With our numbers, if you read our action plan, could you imagine if tomorrow morning 100 million people across America stayed home, didn't
Yeah.
buy anything,
Yeah.
didn't pay a tax, didn't put gas in a car, they stayed home and played with their kids or
Yeah.
went to their neighbors and had a barbecue. And they all did that until the government said, okay, now we'll listen.
Right.
It wouldn't
That's not a
take very
bad.
long.
It wouldn't. Not a bad idea. I keep talking to a lot of people who are really in favor of general strikes. They really want to see something happen that hurts the pocketbooks of the corporations. And when Occupy did their port shutdown a couple years ago, they had totaled up just from one day. It was millions and millions of dollars of economic impact that caused just by shutting down those imports for a little while. That's another thing I hope we kind of get control of too, is our dependency on foreign countries to give us junk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, with your project, the Living Constitution, and you talk to people, what is it that you would say is resonating with them? What's working? What is kind of fallen flat? And how popular is it getting?
What's Well, I'll handle what's falling flat right now. What's falling flat is trying to get momentum when you're doing things on your own. It does take that team. There's always those humps where, okay, all of a sudden you got 5 or 6 people that are really helping you, not just kind of spreading the word a little bit. And because it is total grassroots, it's it's hard to get those first steps out of the gate. It might take the next 6 months or so until you can build some infrastructure to get the word out enough. That's the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now, which I also don't mind because I didn't want anything to be subverted or infiltrated from the start. I'd rather it be slow than I saw a lot of different movements or groups start up quick. They got subverted with people that were against them, in fact, and basically destroyed them from inside.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. So that's my biggest challenge right now. One of the biggest positives that I've come within is that the living constitution itself is very encompassing and very simple. One of our first articles is that all language to do with the Constitution or law will be in the simplest form for every person to be able to understand.
Yeah.
I never understood a law or constitution or any other form of governance, no matter what system, that has to be made so complicated that half the people can't even understand it anyway. Half the experts can't understand
You're
it.
absolutely
So,
right. Our Constitution is terribly old, but believe it or not, that was supposed to be common language, but it's just so arcane that we have trouble interpreting it. Obviously, if we're thinking that money is speech and people are corporations, so
yeah, absolutely. But we meant it is in anything to do with the governance of people. So even in the forming of a law, has to be simple. It has to be so that not only is it encompassing on what it wanted to actually do, um, but so that every individual would be able to stand up and defend themselves and have an understanding of it, instead of having to go to a lawyer, even just to pen a piece of paper into a court. The courts and mankind were never under the understanding that that was supposed to happen. You were supposed to be able to stand up, and as long as you had a Bible, you could defend yourself because that's what law was.
right,
And I think that was a fundamental thing. It also addressed our Constitution actually addressed the actual forming of the government, where the structuring of the government is much more from a reverse pyramid. Everything is a matter of the people, the towns, the counties, the individual provinces have the power, and they have the mandate to lead their day-to-day existence in life. The federal level is voted by the people and have a very strict mandate on what they are responsible for, and they're not responsible for dictating the rest of the country's life.
right,
The provinces in your own community, your own town, is responsible for that. You're responsible for that.
right.
Which is a matter of also, guess what? Self-governance means great responsibility. And if you want a constitution, if you want to be free, you're putting yourself in responsibility for yourself.
Right. Now that actually leads me to my next question, and it's very serious. Considering the fact that there's companies that are interested in the resources of Canada, like the oil companies, Monsanto, um, very big interests that have oodles and oodles of money. Potentially, what you're talking about here is a massive transition of power, a peaceful transition of power, but it is threatening to their power base. So, knowing these companies are basically psychotic entities out there, do you fear for your own safety by pushing these kinds of ideas at all?
Hmm. Interesting question. Um, no.
No. Good.
Um, I made that choice before I decided to put the first typewriter to paper. As the I guess I'm telling my age now, or should I say the first keystroke to WordPress or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I made that choice then, and for myself, this life isn't right.
Right.
It's not right for me. It's not right for my fellow man. It's definitely not right for the children, grandchildren, and the future generations. Um, I do my part. I was blessed with what I have, and the ability to I think walk through the doors that have been shown me, and I think that's my responsibility. Where that leads in the future or outcome of it isn't an investment of me. My investment for myself or my responsibility uh, to myself and to my beliefs is to step forward every day. I can't have an investment in the outcome of it because I can't tell what the outcome's going to be, and I can't worry about down the road. I got to be worried about 7:30 coming and making a phone call to you,
Right.
and doing what I'm doing tomorrow, and I concern myself with not letting the project get subverted at all. Uh, but I'm only a person, and my idea of things, and one of the things in our Constitution, is that there is no prime minister, there is no president. It's run by a council, a supreme council of equal authority people voted by the people. And that means the power belongs to everybody. No one person can ever have power. It doesn't work. It never has. All of our mankind's history is proven it never has.
Right.
So I don't know why we would keep a system like it. It didn't work for Caesar. It won't work for presidents. It won't work for kings. So why would we ever have that? Why wouldn't we go back to ancient times where you can actually look at tribal elder councils, where this world existed for 5 to 10,000 years in peace until the white man came around? So why wouldn't you take a system that does work over one that doesn't? So my concept of that is, you know what, it really doesn't matter what happens to me. The ideas are on paper. Ideas never die. And there'll be somebody that will follow through.
Well, God bless you, Mark. I'm glad you're doing it, and I want to encourage everybody out there in Canada to look you up at the Living Constitution is it in Canada,
That's
and
Canada, sorry?
what's your website address again?
It's CanadaTheNation.ca.
Great. And of course, look us up at articlev.org. We want to take our Constitution back, and hopefully, you folks out there in Canada can establish a new Constitution, and who knows, maybe even the Star Trek Society is waiting for us over that horizon. But our imaginations are kind of the limit right now if we
Absolutely
get
there.
everything on the table. So again, thanks, Mark Fanjoy, for joining us
I
and
appreciate it, sir.
giving us the lowdown on what's happening up there in Canada. Aloha.
Aloha. I appreciate it, sir. I look forward to our next talk.
Me too. Me too. Aloha.